say to me, "You've struck it lucky. You work in a beautiful building, play and practice on a beautiful prestige organ, and have peace and quiet in the bargain. But the cathedral rules our lives. Even our practice has to be in public, and the treadmill has to be kept revolving year in and year out. This cathedral's been brooding here in this remote valley for 8 centuries. Too big for the landscape, like a great cuckoo in a barren Welsh nest. Sometimes I think my friends and I are like little hedge sparrows, doomed for life to satisfy its voracious appetite. It's a lonely job too. Thousands come to St Davids in the summer, some just to see the building. And indeed, on a wet day, it's the only entertainment they have. So good luck to them. But I can say this, tourists are a very odd lot. I suppose every historical cathedral and building has the look of a museum or showplace about it. But all the same, in this sort of place, one doesn't expect to be asked, "Are you open on Sundays?" But it's happened here. Come to think of it, you know, every day is Sunday in a cathedral. And compulsory music churns out all the year round, and every day, except Boxing Day, perhaps. If you were to call here in December on a wet Wednesday afternoon, you'd still have the round of choir and organ exactly as in the summer, with the difference that the beaches are empty and nobody's clicking cameras in the churchyard. And that's what a cathedral's for, but there aren't many who think about it in that way. The clergy know the form, of course. It's their job. They've been ordained and sworn to uphold the order of things, and with all the customs and appurtenances and other words which appear in their agreement, so they can't complain at all when Sundays come round only too often. But what are the rest of us? We're just artisans and craftsmen. Poor fellows whose shop floor happens to be the nave of a great cathedral. In medieval days, my title would have been Pulsata Organorum, organ basher in other words. And that's what I do now. I bash it out non-stop. One cathedral agreement says every singer must conduct himself like a Christian gentleman. But it doesn't say he's got to be one. But we've got one thing in common with the clergy. Our jobs will never be done. We'll never live to see the end of it. And sometimes it gets a bit much. Take Billy here. 43 years taking care of this place and still cutting the same grass that his father cut in his 40-year stint. There's still too much grass and it still grows too high. But Billy's son won't be cutting it. He's crossed the Great Divide. He's vicar of a parish the other side of the county, harvesting souls instead of hay. Sid is much more than a carpenter, and lots of his fine carving is to be seen here and in other churches around. The ornate roof of this nave contains some of his restoration work. Visitors can't tell, and I can see it from the organ loft only because Sid has pointed it out to me. But the cathedral has taken the best years of his life.
The roof, some years ago, before we repaired it, was full of timber such as this. Rotten, as you can see. And this, of course, is caused by this that little devil called the death watch beetle. And this one I broke off a beam which actually came from the neighbour roof some days ago. 2 days ago I split this off, and indeed I found one of the little beggars. Actually saw one. And you might have a look, if I can possibly winkle him out now, you could see him. I don't want to damage it. Now, he's gone in since the day before yesterday, a good half-inch. Yes, so here we are. I think I've got him loose now. There he is. Little beggar. And that's the one that does all the damage. You can see it's quite a big thing. We didn't find many actual grubs. It's very unusual for me to have found that one now. These are more or less conquered now. Of course, there will always, I suppose, be something to be done around the old place here, even after I'm gone, and my children as well, after me, no doubt.
People tell me that this kind of work can't be done nowadays. Bunk. Sid can do it in wood, and in stone, no medieval craftsman can do better than Maurice Riley here. But of course, he, poor chap, gets no chance to build a cathedral. All he does is to patch this one. Lovely work, but patching nevertheless, with one eye on the budget too. This man is a real slave to the building, a voluntary slave, who must like working here, otherwise he wouldn't do it. And take myself, organist and master of the choristers. I'm very much at home with the other craftsmen here. Like Maurice the Mason, I'm a foreigner, although I've had to learn a bit of Welsh in order to do my job. When I came to Wales, the last thing I expected to find was a famine of singers. It was like having no corn in Egypt. But my first 7 years of famine weren't followed by 7 years of plenty. Raw wood and stone are easy enough to come by, but likely boys here in the remote west are another matter. These choir stalls were planned to hold a fine array of boys, and I reckon I've spent most of my time here trying to fill them, by press gang. Bricks without straw and songs without words has been the story of my 14 years in St Davids. Charles Lamb said, boys are capital fellows in their own way, among their mates, but there've never been enough mates here for the capital ones. They have to have very strong incentives to leave the river and the beach half a mile away, just to sing a cathedral service. Their loyalty is more of a team one, to their buddies first. Certainly not for poor old pulsata organorum, and who can blame them? It's always been so. But things have changed vastly since Billy was a boy treble here. The old disciplines and loyalties seem to have gone, sad to say. And what money the cathedral can afford to pay can't compete in any way with what people earn by picking new potatoes. The family car finally put the kibosh on things. Just think of planning a complicated service with a lot of music, with every chance of the trebles having gone off to Tenby for the day with Mum and Dad in the car. You see, in a little tiny village, remote village like St Davids, a choir school is more essential than in a great city where there are plenty of people about. So rather than a community problem, it became a personal one. I'm told that at one time, instead of wishing people good morning, I began to say, "And how old is your boy now?" In desperation, I turned to my printing press. By day, I scattered outrageous leaflets far and wide. At night, I was haunted by dreams of disappearing choristers. Put it away now. There's a duster. Slacken the bow. Time will improve that, I think. Arnold here is only 8 years old and too young at the moment to be of much use to the cathedral choir. But every son of a St Davids organist is doomed to serve in the choir. Like his brother, this boy will soon be in the mill. Even with a tiny population, as St Davids has, there must have been a time when the organist could pick and choose and sort out these boys. Thomas Tomkins, the great British composer, was a boy here, and the accounts say that 2 boys were appointed in his time, likely to do God's service, was the phrase. I've had no chance of selecting boys on that basis. I've had to take them likely or unlikely to please the Almighty. But that was 400 years ago. "400 years. That represents an immense amount of anxiety to an organist, of grey hairs and ulcers, wondering whether the trebles will be there on Good Friday or whether they'll be on the beach for evensong. But all the time, the solution, the marvellous solution, was under our noses. And we didn't cotton onto it until the miniskirt ascended on Pembrokeshire.
Taking a trip off Norfolk and Penny, having a reverie fine. If you should see her at all.
It was St Paul who first clamped down on women in church services and dictated what they should do or even wear. And down the ages, his veto has stuck. 50 years on from the suffragettes, we find a different story, both in everyday life and in church. We've got a deaconess here who does a man's job, a woman sub-organist, and now, at long last, girl trebles. Many parish churches use girl trebles, but cathedrals never. Not until we at St Davids were pushed in at the deep end. The decision to break with centuries of tradition was finally forced on us on a Wednesday afternoon, about 15 months ago. Here I stood in these stalls with the men, waiting to rehearse the music for an important broadcast choral evensong, and treble trouble again cropped up. We hadn't got enough boys to hold the part down. I tore home, rang up the headmaster of the grammar school, and said, "For mercy's sake, lend me some girls from your school choir." He sent them down post-haste. They sight-read the stuff before 1 million listeners with great effect, so much so that I had tons of letters saying, "Where did you get such excellent choir boys from?" On the strength of this providential rescue from disaster, the girls were appointed official choir boys to the cathedral. As far as I know, the first time in Britain for this to happen.
Love is not a whole of his moon.
Much more second bass, can you?
When thou hast overcome the sharpness of death, thou bidst go back.
It's amazing how gently the men have accepted the girl trebles. Of course, the clergy aren't nearly as hidebound as they sometimes look, and I expected no trouble from them. I didn't get any either.
We believe that thou shalt come to be our
That's
judge.
lovely. I'm going on immediately, but there's one thing I must put right, and this is... But many of the men I've met in cathedral choirs have been very stubborn people. They're a loyal lot, but often a bit conservative, with a small c, of course. Over these girls, though, they've been marvellous. Not a moan from anybody. There's no one reason why a man joins a cathedral choir. Nowadays, it's rarely the money, certainly not at St Davids. I don't think it's often religion either. The major here has been at it for 50 years. Every note counts for him. In his retirement, church music goes well with his garden and his roses. But some of our men have a very much less peaceful weekday existence. Eric Waterson's life is all molto agitato. St Davids has two showpieces for the world, the cathedral and the lifeboat. Only one man has a foot in both, Willie Morris.
I like singing in the cathedral, which to a great extent has helped me in my lifeboat work, the discipline of the choir and the services. Yeah, I mean, we have to be very careful in our singing, and we are often pulled up by our organist and choirmaster. He wants perfection, as it should be. And the same thing applies to the lifeboat. You can't afford to make mistakes. I know I get my leg pulled here very often in the boathouse. My mates calling me a Holy Joe or Reverend Malachi Jones, and perhaps I am the odd one out.
Make them to be numbered with thy saints, in glory everlasting. O Lord, save thy people, and bless thine heritage. Govern them, and lift them up forever. Day by day, we magnify thee, and we worship thy name, ever world without end.
Thank you very much. Here come the girls, so we're going to turn straight away to the Gibbons, as soon as they're settled. Those are 10 breaks with tradition are settled. Would you be ready for the first chorus, please, of the Gibbons? Thanks. Right then, girls. The Gibbons verse anthem, please. Okay, Major. Everybody's supposed to like a big splash wedding. It's about as relevant to the everyday life of the cathedral as a royal visit or a flower festival. But it's nice to see people happy. And the girls love it, of course. And since they've joined us, even the men have enjoyed weddings a bit more. Small boys would be far too self-important to enjoy an event like this. And lots of older males sometimes get a bit truculent when a crowd of strangers turn up and take over our cathedral. But since the girls stepped in, I at least am a lot more tolerant. But anyway, I don't like champagne very much. The grandest ceremonies soon find their perspective in the shadow of the cathedral. It would take an earthquake to ruffle Maurice Riley's calm.
Hi, Maurice.
Hello, Peter. How'd the champagne go?
Well, I did have an invitation, but I couldn't go because I'm off to another job shortly.
I see.
What are you doing here? Nice piece of stone.
It come from Kabuddi Bay.
I see. It's a memorial tablet.
That's right.
The old archdeacon, oh yes.
Do you know him?
He was a great humorist and a great lover of the music here.
Well, I'm sure he would approve of the type of stone I'm using. It's Cambrian sandstone.
Cambrian sandstone, beautiful colour. And very smooth. Maurice, would this have come from the cliff face or off the beach?
Well, the quarry is not worked, Pete, not today. And
Yes.
of course, if you want a piece of stone to work, you've got to go and get a pebble.
Some pebble. The beach is strewn with great boulders from the old quarry, and the whole coastline hereabouts could be a vast larder for the mason's trimming table. So it always moves me to think that the whole great church was hewn out of this one quarry at Caribudi Bay. "800 years ago, the first incisions were made in this rock, and the empty scar on the cliff's face is a small price to pay for the great building in the hollow 2 miles away. The hard stone for the walls and the soft stone for the carved interior all came from the one quarry by the sea, century after century. But of all the tourists, it's only the children who seem to have a feel for the texture of craftsmanship. Adults prefer a storyline.
In the early 16th century, and so the architecture is what we call perpendicular architecture. Now here in this oak casket are kept the reputed relics of our patron saint. In the year 1925, the Eastern Orthodox patriarchs presented this very lovely jeweled casket to the dean and chapter. They were, of course, very impressed with the relics. They were allowed to kiss them and to venerate them. And this is their gift to the dean and chapter. And in this casket is a little glass tube which contains what is thought to be a relic of our patron saint. Well, here it is. And this is what makes this lovely church of ours a shrine. But above all, it is a cathedral church, a church wherein is maintained daily the round of worship.
To me, as a poor musician, the shrine at St Davids is the memorial to Thomas Tomkins. It took 400 years for us to get around to commemorating the composer, but it was done in the end. Even in 400 years, I don't think anybody will put up a plaque for me, thank heaven. After all, in this entire building, there isn't one word to record the names of the craftsmen who built it. Come to think of it, though, I could still make it, very much against the odds. as the last male organist, the ultimate pulsata organorum the old place ever had.